Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. Looks like everybody's here with the exception of the mayor. Approval of minutes from yesterday's meeting. Anybody would like to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, declare the motion passed. Okay, budget review continued. Let's start with the pool. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to point out that we've been trying as we go along to follow the budget order. We are going to go out of order some here in terms of the SDC funds. At the end of the presentation, we will cover all of the SDC funds, so just know as we're going along, we're going to be skipping those, and those will all be done at the end. So I will take the pool. The highlights of the pool wanted to talk about is just some of the numbers, memberships, swim lessons, average weekly swimmers in different areas. 6 times a year it's rented out, and attendance at open swims averages 159 people per month. We have no changes to the staffing levels. Just to note, in 16-17 we were not in charge of the pool. 17-18 is when we took it over. This year, we have increased the fees for the first time since we took back over the pool 10%, so this would be a 5% increase over the last 2 years. One of the important factors to be aware of and to be cognizant of, not only this year, but in the coming years, is the Oregon minimum wage increase. So each year for the next 4 years? Three more years. Yeah, this would be the first 4 total years. We're going to see increases of 50 to 75 cents per year. Since our lifeguards are all minimum wage employees, that's going to have an impact, and then that's also going to have an impact to our swim instructors, as well as due to compression, we're going to need to move them up at the same amount. So staffing is one of the biggest costs of the pool, so this minimum wage increase is going to have a pretty significant impact on our operational costs. We transferred $50,000 to the Stayton pool, and this provides stable funding, and that's consistent with the previous year. So the performance measures of the pool are listed out through here. Lessons, open swim, hours of operations, special classes, additional patrons, residents, non-residents. Silver Fit is a benefits program for seniors, same with AARP, and the Silver Sneakers program. These are all programs we actively promote. It helps pay for, defer the cost that the citizens pay to fund the pool. Line item of actual budgets. Again, just wanted to point out the personnel services. We're anticipating a significant increase in relation to cost overall, and we're going to see this going forward. We prepared for this. We'll probably need to do the same type thing, which is a 5% increase each year on the rates to help cover that additional cost for the pool employees. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the pool.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Campbell regarding the pool? Great, let's go ahead and move along. Street fund.
All right. Good evening, everybody. We'll continue on with the street fund. From last night's parks fund. The staffing levels of the street fund have not changed over the year. We have one proposed. We've had one in the past. Accomplishments this last year, Regis Street Improvement Project, that is actually going on now. We generally go out to bid on our street improvement projects that include capital, reconstructions, and overlays in the spring, late winter, spring, to try to maximize our pricing. We got a very good price for Regis Street this year. We had over a mile of mill and overlay at a very reasonable price. I actually believe it came in less than Virginia Street last year. We're paving more roads, so that's very good. We have Silver Springs crack sealing coming up this June. That is going to be with Marion County, as we did last year. We will be having more control over it this year, though I've let them know that. They understand that. We did perform a slurry seal in Quail Run and Village Creek subdivisions last year. The transportation system plan update, it'll be completed. It's basically completed now. We'll be bringing it before the council in June for adoption. or the process. The Sidewalk Rehabilitation Program, we started in April. It will be complete in June of this year. And that encompasses sidewalks from Regis Street to Shaft Road, from First Avenue to Gardner. All the sidewalks that did not meet code are being replaced. We had a city contract. I would say about 45% of the people joined the city contract. Another 55% came in and got their right-of-way permits to do the work themselves. We're going to give them till the end of June. The end of June to complete the work on their own. And if they don't, we will be going out in a separate contract and billing those folks. We've given them 3 months to do it. We let them know that. And obviously they're on board enough to where they came in and got their right-of-way permits to do the work. And the street maintenance throughout the year. We perform potholes, crack sealing, that kind of thing throughout the year. Our activity measures, or performance measures, if you will, you can see them, 2018-19, which is the road we're doing now, is 1 mile of overlays. That's lane mile. Slurry seals, we have 1.7 miles. Street signs, we replaced 153 of those. Cleaned, you can see miles of street cleaned. Curb ramps constructed, 12. Pounds of asphalt, 2,730. And our program, let me go back there. Wrong button. You can see we collected 297 pounds for the food bank this last fall with our yard cleanup. Our roads are still not in very good shape. That's our overall street rating for the PACER. Using the PACER scale, it's 5.5. We generally want to see a good city is looking at about a 6.7 or a 67 if you're looking at a PCI. So we've got a ways to go, but we're moving in the right direction now. This year, we have our road repaired cost per mile is $359,000. I said we got a good deal. We did get a good deal. There's just more work involved with this road, pavement-wise, sidewalk-wise, that drove the cost up for that per unit. Strategic issues, reduce potholes throughout the city. We have potholes throughout. This is nothing new. You all know that. You live in this community. You drive around daily. You see potholes, probably hit them. Something we really want to work towards is ADA ramp, handicap ramp restoration and rehabilitation. We want to continue the sidewalk rehabilitation program that we started again this year. Now that we have the new engineer on staff, this is something that he's going to be focusing on. So next year we'll be doing another two quarter sections within our community and doing the same thing. And then code enforcement, working with police department, code enforcement officer to keep our codes, keep people meeting our codes with, and that just doesn't mean sidewalks and curb ramps. That means trees hanging over the sidewalk at a low elevation so people can't really walk on the sidewalk. That means tree limbs in the street where you can't drive by unless your car will get hit by them. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking at, and as well as lawns that are very long and are actually a fire hazard in the summertime. Long-term strategic upgrade the overall level of our street performance. Add pavement management software. I've got it budgeted this year. I want to move towards a PCI measurement. That software will actually help us manage the projects that we have going forward. It won't be as much as a 8 of us getting around a table and looking at our rating systems. The software helps us look at different indicators of the road, the time that it was built, the core samples. You put all this into this nice software and it projects out roads that you should be looking at. This software is really reasonably rated. I think it's like $3,000, and it's going to be a tool that is very beneficial to us. So I've got that budgeted in my budget this year. And a continued partnership with Marion County, reduce costs and slurry seals, and we're actually going to be looking at Shaft Road. We met with the new Public Works Director a couple of weeks ago, and he has promised us that they are going to do Shaft Road. And and they will be doing all the handicap approaches on Shaft Road. That's 2 years from now, which gives us some time to do a sanitary sewer and a water line project that I'll discuss later. Continue working with code enforcement. You guys can see these. You shouldn't have to go through each one of these. If there's something that stands out that you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask. Long term, I want to look for additional funding sources to help create or help work and rebuild our streets. Dan and I have talked about looking into CDBG funds in certain neighborhoods in our community. Perhaps we can apply for those through the county to help us rebuild streets and our sewer systems and our storm systems. I've done that with other cities in the past. It's a great program if we can qualify. It's for basically a lower income area, and I think Dan can talk more about that another time. And continue to maximize the efficiencies within the department to get more bang for the buck for taxpayers, and that's things like going out early with contracts, partnering with stakeholders, partnering with the county and other agencies to get our roads done at a reduced cost. So we're always looking for those partnerships, and that's what that's referring to. Changes. The city will partner with a developer to construct Shaft Road this summer. That is the Lambert Place subdivision. I am working on the final stages of the development agreement with them now. But that road will be built out very similar to what's in front of middle school and what's in front of Roger Roberts' old property, which is now known as Dan? Wildlife Meadows, thank you. This summer, the Silver Springs will have a slurry seal applied to the road surface. Transfers to the general fund, Public Works Administration are increased after an update due to cost allocation methodology. Basically what this is saying, we're spending, my administration is spending more time with streets now, so we transferred more into our department from the street fund to help fund that time. And next year, 1920, the city will be milling and overlaying the road, Deschutes and Willamette, basically an industrial area. All those roads will be milled and overlaid. And we have an increase of 1.9% of the street fee. Capital outlay for the street fund. We have the transportation plan. I said it will be complete. We have $20,000. I have that in basically as a placeholder. I think we can get it done without touching that, but I want something in there just in case they come in with some extras that we can pay for. So that may not be used, but I wanted something in there as a placeholder to pay them just in case they came in. They've done a very good job. I think they've been very inclusive of the community. They've put on very good, they've had very good meetings with our community. They've done a wonderful job for us, and I'm looking forward to having that complete. And then $450,000 for the mill and overlay of Deschutes, Willamette, and Road next year. And that is the street fund. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Ludwig, I had a question actually regarding the PCI inspection or rating, whatnot. The software that you mentioned, the $3,000, is that like an annual fee you have to pay for renewal of the software, or is it one time?
What I've checked into, it's a one-time deal.
Okay.
I just came across this after going to an ABWA meeting. Every basically municipality and county in the state uses it.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's time to move in that direction. I think it's not going to be too long before, when I talked about getting funding, some of these agencies may want to look and see what your PCI rating is. We don't have a PCI rating. I can't really tell them. What I can do is, we got a PACER. It's kind of tenfold over that. But in order for me to go out for funding, we've got to move in that direction. And I think it's a cheap enough investment to help us that overall, I think we're going to benefit from it.
Understood. Thank you. Does anyone else have questions? Mr. Walker, go ahead.
I don't know if this is when you want to deal with this or you want to wait till later, but the memorandum of understanding with the Santiam Water Control District, how does that impact our streets?
Well, it impacts our streets quite a bit, actually. Our street, you gotta look at it as a footprint, all right? It's a footprint, and in that footprint, we have impervious area. Anytime you widen a street, and what we've been doing lately, since I've been here, we've been doing milling and overlaying. We're not really widening the street or anything, so we're not creating any more storm drainage. So we're not putting any more storm drainage into the Salem ditch by the work we've been doing recently. In the next couple of years, though, I have scheduled Fifth Avenue from Washington up to Hollister. That's a total reconstruct. That's something we need to do in this community. That's going to be widening the roads, putting sidewalks down the people's front yards, really trying to address the issue of substandard streets. In order for me to do that, I need to find storm drainage, way to treat and route storm drainage. Because that's the key to the memo of understanding. They don't want any more storm drainage in their system. They want it clean, whatever we do put in, and they don't want any more that's already going there. So what I'm looking at doing is, and I'll talk about this more when we get to storm drainage, is using more of a green street standard, building swales along Steiner Road. It's going to cost us more money because we're going to have to maintain those swales. Other cities do it. Once a year I'll have a landscaper come in and they'll clean it out, and that'll be that. It'll grow up again. What I'm going to try to use are grass swales, less maintenance, slow growing grass. Might have to mow them once a year type of thing. But that's really the footprint of a street fund. Anytime you increase impervious area in our community, you've got to have a place to take that additional storm drainage, and they don't want it in their ditches. And that was one of the drivers for the lawsuit, was because we were just dumping water into their system, and they didn't. First of all, they're sending that water out to the crops. Well, they want to make sure that the water they're treating their crops with, they don't have heavy metals in them. They don't have other pollutants. Kind of makes sense. So in the memo of understanding, that's one of the things we're trying to do, is rid the water of any kind of heavy metals, oils, things like that. And that's what that is. There's several steps as part of that memo of understanding. I think we're almost complete with step one. I'm not sure if that answered your question. It's really it's storm drainage is it's huge, and it does relate to streets, because anytime you widen a street, you're creating storm drainage.
Thank you. I got one just small question.
Sure.
Are you able to utilize French drains, which are another cheaper way to go along with the swales and stuff?
Yeah, you are, if you don't have high groundwater. So another thing that one of the things I was looking at in my plan that I had was to set piezometers in strategic locations throughout the city. All right, so we can.
Do you want to see what piezometers are, just for people?
Piezometers are basically a 2-inch pipe that you stick in the ground anywhere from 10 to 20 feet. In the wintertime, when rains come, groundwater goes up, I can measure how deep, how far down that groundwater is. But we don't really know. All we can do is we can drive down Chaff or Wilco and you see water standing in fields, right? If we have high groundwater, you can't use French drains because it's not doing anything. Water's just going to stay there. It's not going to go in. It's going to like hit a concrete floor. It's just going to come up. It's going to flood. You're going to be flooding out neighbors, and then we're going to have a different kind of problem. So we will use those where we can. That's what I can say. But I don't know exactly where I can use those right now because I don't know where the groundwater is everywhere.
Counselor Hook?
Thank you, Chair Patty. Lance, first off, thank you so much for explaining all of that stuff. I know that for me it's helpful to understand what you're doing and that you're willing to explain it in such detail. Is there a way that you can explain the total amount a consumer can expect overall in their increases to their utility bill when we're talking about everything? Because it just seems like we're doing like more percentages as we go along. We're talking about percentages here, percentages there. I didn't know if maybe Andy's was the full percentage when he was talking yesterday. But if we're looking at like a $100 bill a month, what are we expecting over this whole budget for the utility bill increase for
I think it's a 1.9% increase to the street fee per household, but I'll let Andy actually talk about that.
Yeah, glad to. Yeah, I think, we covered this yesterday, and again, it's 1.9% on street,
Okay.
water, street, storm, and sewer, and 4.5 on water.
And that was that, like, was it 260? About 260 to 3?
And it ends up being,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
2.6 to 3% overall. You know, when you average all the different elements out, it ends up in the 2.6 to 3% range.
Thank you. I just
on
wanted to
the
make sure I
total.
was understanding that these weren't additional things that were going in as we were
Right.
going along. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Lance?
Chair Petty.
Go ahead, Councilor Hort.
Thank you. Lance, I know that you kind of alluded to a little bit that you're doing a more, like a major reconstruct, not next year, but like in the coming years.
Yeah.
Do we have any long-term goals specifically to deal with the streets, kind of in the more downtown area, where we don't have sidewalks and we have lots of potholes that are kind of tricky to fix because of the way that they're constructed?
Well, in the past, we have not. We've basically looked at some of the downtown streets, and if they're not improved, they're last on the list. All right? Just the way we've done it in the past. Personally, I'd like to see some of those streets rebuilt, which is why I'm looking at Fifth Avenue, which is why I'm looking at Water Street. But you still have to, what we're doing, I don't want to get out of line of priorities. We go out and we rate the streets, and I have a priorities list based on those ratings, and that's what we're looking for. And one of the things I do look for, and I know you guys have heard this before, because it's like beating a dead horse, is that I look at what other utilities need to be put in there before I can decide what streets to build, because we really don't have any money in the storm system. We have basically zero money to put storm pipes in the ground. So I can't really go to a street like Fifth Avenue and put a new stormwater system in. I just can't. Don't have the money for it. Sanitary sewer I can afford to do. Water lines I can afford to do. So I really got to look and pick and choose what streets, based on those ratings, that make the most economical sense, where I can get the most bang for the buck. Where I can go and do a street and be done with the sidewalks, all the infrastructure's in the ground, beautiful new street, and we're done. Until we start building up that stormwater account, that's kind of what I'm looking for. But we do base it on ratings.
So, I guess I'll touch on that, and I hope it's okay. Go ahead. And maybe Brian or Hank or someone else could remember, but about 3 or 4 years ago, there was policy in place that said if a street wasn't fully improved, the city would do no improvements on it. So we removed that criteria from the policy. So in other words,
Can you say that again?
if a street wasn't fully improved, then the city would not do any sort of maintenance on it. So we removed that. That's one of the reasons why many of those roads in the downtown area are in the condition they're in, because by policy for many years, they didn't hit the definition of being something the city, and there was other issues as well. But so we changed that, but it's still, we're talking about the same sort of issues. So I'm trying to remember, I will say 3 to 4 years ago is when that change was made, just to say, no, we're going to base it off a more priority-based system.
And I think within my department that as soon as we pass that 3% gas tax, it only makes sense. You know, people doesn't matter where you live in this community, if you're contributing to that, you should see a benefit from it, right? So we kind of look at it that way. So that's what we're kind of looking for, different areas that are, those ratings, they rate to be done. They might be in different areas. They might not all be downstairs or downtown or Ida Street or Washington Street, Old Town, you know? Let's go over to Old Town and put a road in. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Cranston.
First of all, thank you for removing that plan, or that hurdle of not doing unimproved streets, because those are the ones that kind of need it the most. But also, if our groundwater is so high, why are we struggling to find a secondary water source?
We knew that was coming. It's not.
Well, when does groundwater get high?
In the winter,
When do we need the least amount of water?
in the winter.
There you go.
You don't even have to be an engineer. But that's typically what it is. We don't have any problems with water in the wintertime. You can have more water than you need, but summertimes when we need it, groundwater's lower, and that might be one of the alternatives that we look at, and I will get into that when we get into the water fund.
Excellent. Any other questions? Okay, please continue. Thank you.
All right, speaking of the water fund. Staffing stays the same as it has. Looks like we went down from 17 to 18. I'm not really sure why that is. I think that was actually the utility building inside City Hall went down that point too. But for the last, as far as people in the field working for me, it's been the same for the last 4 years. Accomplishments: we won the best tasting surface water again for the third consecutive year, which is a great milestone. And I hope you guys don't expect to see this every year. We'll try, but it's huge.
The award is now at City Hall, too.
We're replacing the slow sand filter. That project is going on right now. It'll be done by the end of June. We maintain 44 miles of water line within the city. That includes all the services, valves, everything that goes along with that. Our activity measures for the water department: we produced 753 million gallons. We consumed 676. Those numbers don't jive.
You're looking at projected.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am. Excuse me.
That's okay. You're really excited about what you're going to do next year, but
Well, I noticed, see right here, they don't jive. But the reason for that is our actual water meter down coming into the plant needs to be replaced. It doesn't always match what we produce. Unfortunately, that is on the schedule to get done this summer. So, anyway, we consume about 628 million. We replaced 77 meters, fire hydrants 1, services repaired 9, filter beds cleaned 7, and sand filter replacement 1. Strategic issues: ensure funding is sustainable to meet our 5-year capital improvement project schedules. I think Andy's, since he's been on the board, I think we've looked at that a lot harder, looking at our 5-year capital improvement plans and looking at how we're going to finance those projects. Andy's done a good job working with us, and I think we're getting a pretty good handle on it. Obviously, there's going to be some fine, but I think we're moving in the right direction. We can actually make plans what we're going to do in the 5 years. We'd like to move to 10 years, but right now we're at 5. Perform feasibility study for the alternative water source. We spoke a little bit last night on that. We spent $40,000 in 2014 to do the infiltration gallery study down along the well 75. I feel pretty confident. I read that report. I read it recently. I feel pretty confident that that is going to be something that will be scoped out with the request for proposal. That document will be used when we're looking for alternative water sources as an alternate. But whoever gets this job will be using that. And so I feel real comfortable with that number. This is really just a feasibility number. We're not constructing anything with $47,000. This is trying to go out and see, first of all, if we can dig a deeper well where they are, if we can put an infiltration gallery down by the river. If we do, how will the effects of a low river affect it? Will it? What will happen if we have fuel spill in the North Santiam? Will it affect the water we pull out of the gravels? Those are the kind of things they're going to look at, as well as looking at other places to put deep water wells, because that's really our only options, regardless of where we're at in this community, are wells. It's the only water source we have. I don't even know if the state will give us a permit to get a well, put in a well. But those are the things that we're going to be looking for with this secondary water source study. Long-term, design and construct that alternate water source, Update the water system master plan and design and construct a contact time system. That's an issue that has been on our plates for the last 4 years. It keeps getting pushed back because of other issues, but that's something that we're going to have to address in the next 3-4 years. Challenges: monitor the Detroit Dam temperature control and downstream fish passage project and the ramifications for the city. We have a meeting in May, beginning in May. It's going to be with the North Santiam Watershed Council. They're having their annual meeting. I know the Corps is going to be there to talk about that. And then in June, the Corps is going to be having a meeting that I'll be attending. They're going to discuss that project, and if they come out with and the environmental impact statement that they prepared, I'm not sure if they're going to come out with what alternative they've come up with, but that's what really that's discussing. Work with the community to practice conservation and upgrade water efficient fixtures. I think we're going to reach out to Energy Trust of Oregon to see what we can do to provide energy efficient water fixtures to our community. We did that a few years ago. It looked like it was a pretty decent success. If we do have any kind of water conservation issues in the future, I mean, we're going to have to look to everything, and that's, you know, people are going to have to start conserving water, and that'll be a way of doing it. And provide water system upgrades. Long term, make sure that we continue to make sure water quality and water supply and treatment capacity meets our needs. Continue to work with the North Santiam Watershed Council to support watershed protection, upstream, downstream. Just make sure that partnership's good, strong, and healthy. Changes, delay of Shaft Road Waterline project. I was scheduled to do that this year. We've got a design ready to go. We had some issues with Marion County. They were supposed to pave this summer, but they took us off their 5-year capital improvement plan. So I postponed that. There's no need to go out and spend the money for it right now. I'm going to give it a year or two. The slow sand filter popped its head out of nowhere, so we want to use those funds to get that done, and we'll get Shaft Road Waterline project done in the next few years. Transfers to the general fund and Public Works Administration to reduce cost allocation methodology. And no supplemental investment to the city retirement plan. Capital outlay. I invite you all to come down to the control room, the water treatment plant. This is where it houses all our electronics, our computers that monitor automation systems of our pumping. There's no air conditioning and no filter in there for dust. You can go in there and we got dust all over the windings of our motors, the computers. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. So I budgeted $20,000 to put an air conditioning and filter system in the control room so we can hopefully not have that disaster occur. Sorry for the slide. Install uninterruptible backup power at the Pine Street Reservoir. Right now, if we have a power outage, people east of the Pine Street Reservoir lose water until someone comes in. Could be midnight, could be Sunday afternoon, until somebody physically comes into that plant and presses a button to turn it over, and I can't guarantee how long that's going to take. So with that money, it's going to put a unit up there that automatically kicks the generator on once that power goes off, so those people don't have to wait. And that's what that's about. It's a pretty big deal. Should have been done when we had the plant rehabilitated and built. This construct pad for sand material for cleaning purposes. You're all aware of the sand filter issue that we've had. And you're aware that I believe I had a presentation where we clean sand out of each one of those filter beds 3-4 times a year. Well, in the past, we've just piled it up and given it to contractors to haul away. Well, from now on, we're going to stockpile that, and we're going to pay a contractor fractions of the dollar to come in and clean that sand so we can just reuse it. So what I want to do is I want to spend $22,000 to build a pad and ultra block walls so we can support that sand, so we don't have to go out and spend $550,000 for a sand every other year. So I think it's a very good investment, and that's where we're headed. Equipment, $20,000. This is just a general placeholder for equipment. And then the secondary water source, I have at $47,000. I think I talked about that a little bit, what we're looking for there. Are there any questions regarding the water fund?
Here's one.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Lance, how much of the town is serviced by that Pine Street Reservoir? How much of it
Most
is...
of it goes there now. We pump our water right up there now. We don't even use anything else, basically.
So it's not just east of the reservoir, it's the whole west, it's all...
Everything feeds off that thing.
All right.
Can feed off that thing. Let me put it that way.
Another one. In all the things you do, the maintenance of those fire hydrants, that's not a big deal, is it?
Well, we do it annually,
Okay.
but it's not, I know we've talked about this in the past. I would prefer to have that in the city's hands than the fire department's hands because I just do.
So,
But it's not that much, it's not that big of a deal, no.
but you're saying you'd rather do it than have them do it?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay, well, that's the way it is now, isn't it?
pretty much.
Okay,
Don't blame it.
okay.
Any
Well,
other-
the fire hydrants exist for who?
The
Citizens
community.
of Stayton.
That's the big picture. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you, Lance.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Councilor Quigley.
Thank you, Chairman Patty. Lance, for those citizen members of the committee, I don't think that, I think a little condensed version of what the slow sand filter does would be appropriate. I think we're not really giving it a fair shake of what it actually does and how that award that we win every year ties into it. Can you give us a condensed version real quick?
Yeah, so we get water from the North Santiam River through the power canal that the Water Control District owns. At the end of the power canal, we have a head wall that has a pipe in it that drains right down into our water treatment plant. At the water treatment plant, we inject a little chlorine into that water and then we split it off to each one of these sand filter beds. They're a half-acre apiece. Water goes in through a head wall. Water is dumped into these sand filter beds to a point of about 3.5 feet deep, and then it slowly percolates through the sand, the gravel, and below the sand and gravel, we have a system of pipes with holes in them. And once it goes through that sand, it's a cleaning process, a biological cleaning process that occurs in the top 6 inches. And the water gets down into the pipe. It's relatively clean. From the pipes, it goes into our clear well, which we inject soda ash. Soda ash is used for neutralizing acidic water. So acidic water doesn't go into each one of your homes and destroy your pipes. And that way you have high copper content, perhaps lead content as well. Some of these older homes have lead joints, things like that. So Flint, Michigan, huge problem. That was one of the reasons they had a high acid acidity content, as well as they had a lot of lead pipes from the sewer, the water line into the house. We don't have those here. We've replaced them all. But anyway, getting back to the sand filter, once it leaves the filter beds, goes into the clear well, we inject chlorine, soda ash, sits in the clear well, and if you refer back, if you go back, and let me go back here, contact time, right there, that clear well, that is responsible for contact time, and it's a 500,000 gallon tank. Gets filled in, it's got baffles all through it, water comes down and just kind of gets directed through these baffles, and it sits in there enough time. We calculate that time where the chlorine residual gets to a point low enough where we can send it out into our system where people can drink it, and it doesn't have a bunch of chlorine in it. So it's all a pretty dynamic system. But Brian's right. The only way you can really use these sand filters is if you have a clean water source, and we have one of the cleanest in the country. We just happened to have algae problems last year. But
No, we did not.
Anyway, that is basically in a nutshell what that system is. And if you have any questions regarding that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for explaining it.
And I will touch on what Lance said. If anyone would like a tour, it's a neat tour. The wastewater plant, which is coming up, is also actually a pretty fascinating tour. I would highly recommend if anybody would like to do that, we'd be happy to show you. It's worthy of the time.
Ms. Dominguez, go ahead with your question.
Yes, my question regards the process of cleaning the sand, so we don't have to replace the sand. Can you kind of explain how that cleaning the sand process?
Yeah, so water comes in, as I said, percolates down through the sand. After 8-9 months of the water going through that sand, the top 6 inches of it becomes gummy from silts and things. So we have to go in with a special machinery. And we clean the top inch and a half of sand off. We skim it off. It comes out in a conveyor. Conveyor goes into a truck, like a pickup truck that follows the conveyor around. And then we drive it around and we dump it in the piles, right? We have to do that once a pond, probably every 9-10 months. So each pond gets done at least once. One pond gets done twice in 12 months. And what we had been done in the past is we took those spoils that we clean and we just give it to contractors to use. Doesn't make a lot of sense when we can just pay a contractor to come in pennies on the dollar. I won't say pennies, let's say 50 cents on the dollar to clean that sand, and then we can reuse it. It's not going to be 100%, cubic yard for cubic yard, but if we only have to replace, 20%, 30% of the sand that we remove, we're way ahead of the game, and that's kind of where we're going. That's what we're after.
That's excellent. Does anyone else have questions for? Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair Patty. Lance, I have a question about the sand. First off, I want to say thank you for finding ways to save us money over time. My question is, what kind of savings are we, how long is it going to take for us to kind of see those savings when we're spending this, $22,000 right now to do is that to build the sand cleaning facility?
Well, that's what I have, yeah. I have 22,000, build a place where we can keep this sand and keeps it relatively free of other soils and things like that. You don't want to start mixing it with dirt because then the whole process is wasted and you're not going to get the efficiencies that you're looking for. So how long is it going to, I think your question is, how long is it going to take before we see any kind of return on that $22,000 investment?
Yes, sir.
What?
Mr. Parks?
Well, I was going to say, we take off about 1.5 inches, and I'd have to do a calculation of how much material comes off that half-acre pond each time, because we do 4 of them, and I could give you how much we could have and clean. I would say it's probably going to be 2-3 years before we be able to use enough where we see replenishment. And what I will say is this: when I was here a few months ago, we talked about where we were with all 3 of those. All 3 of them need to be done. All right, so in the next 2 years, we clean 8 ponds. That material, it's going to be used in that next pond. We won't have to go buy it for $80 a cubic yard. We'll be able to save some money there. I don't know if it's going to be $22,000. It may be more, but I'd have to do the calculation of how much we actually pull out of there each time we clean it, because that's really where it's really dependent on that.
Thank you.
And
So
I didn't sit down and calculate that.
sounds like it's going to be in the very near future, we're already going to be seeing.
We'll be seeing a return on
it.
that. How long it takes to pay that back? It could be just 1 pond, and we could have it paid back. I can't tell you until I do this calculation.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Councilor Ord.
Hey. Lance, do we have a UV filter on the current water system?
No.
Okay. And so last year, we were talking about the blue-green algae, then it not being an issue here, but do we test for it, and is that in the budget?
Yeah, we actually test for it. We've already started testing for it.
Okay.
We tested for it all last summer. We tested for it the same as Salem, the same test as Salem, same frequency as Salem. We just didn't have any positive results. And from what I was told, it was Salem's pond, not our pond.
Thanks.
It wasn't the, I won't get into it, but
I'm saying we can.
we didn't have it on our water that went out of the treatment facility. We tested it once, maybe twice a week throughout the summer, and never had any kind of problems. And we're not the only ones, though, I should say. Everybody up and down the canyon didn't have any problems with it.
I believe Counselor Hook has a quick question for you.
Yeah. Is that up on the website, the results?
I believe last year it was.
Yeah, last year was.
And we just started testing in the last week.
Cool. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Great. Please continue.
All right, sewer fund. Something near and dear to the city manager's heart, that wastewater treatment plant. Staffing levels, they do not change. Actually, they don't change. They're at 6.8. We reduced one from 1718 to 1819. We eliminated one chief. We added an operator. And we hired a new chief a new supervisor down there. Great hire, great addition. He's already got some very positive things for us, and I'll touch on that briefly here in a minute. Accomplishments: 33 miles of sanitary sewer collection lines, 4 sanitary sewer lift stations. We installed 464 feet of cured-in-place pipe on Water Street just recently. Started marketing campaign for the Class A biosolids. We called it Santiam Green. This is for public use. I worked with the new supervisor. I always thought we should be looking at trying to sell our biosolids. We have been trying to give it away to farmers. The farmer that we had been putting it on their field said we have enough, we don't need any more. So last year we spent $65,000 hauling it up to the burner up in Brooks. Thank you. And so we started looking at ways that we could start marketing this like other cities. So we're now marketing this as it's a fertilizer, and that's what it is. We took tours of a couple of different plants. I have a friend that is the Director of Public Works for the city of Newburgh. They actually sell theirs for $14 a cubic yard. So what we're going to try to do is follow their template, their model for marketing this. This year, we're just giving it away. Whoever wants it, you can come get it. Come bring with your trailer, your pickup, we'll load you up, take it away. So we're hoping to build a market with that.
Everything goes around.
We're hoping to build a market for that in the future. Maybe we can charge a little bit at a time. But anything we can give away now is just saving us money. We won't have to spend $60,000 going and taking it up to Brooks. We don't have to pay for a new dump truck to go haul it and put it on farmer's field at $250,000. So this is the way to go. We're going to try this program and hopefully save some money.
Sell it to the cannabis vendors.
That we actually have people talking about. They're coming in already.
That's excellent. I did have one question, Lance, before you continue, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is there any kind of EPA concerns or DEQ with this?
No, it's Class A biosolids. We can do it. We have all the tests with DEQ. We put it on our marketing campaign. These are our results, and most municipalities do that. Newburgh was bagging it. They actually were paying to bag it like you'd see in a store.
Okay.
So we're gonna try to do it in bulk, and we're gonna see where we go. We're gonna try to build that program.
Great, Mr. Mayor.
So if you know anybody that needs any Santiam Green, come on down.
Kind of confusing.
Lance, think in small quantities, like a few buckets, just for
Anything.
For tomatoes?
Anything you want. Come
Okay.
down, and we'll load it up for you.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Fertilizer.
It's like a fertilize local campaign, right? Keep your fertilizer local.
So moving on, our activity measures for the year. We treated 686 million gallons of waste. Biosolids produced 179 tons. Manholes cleaned 17. Sewer lines 37,000. TV, meaning we inspect them with the television camera, 36,000, and pipe repairs 149. strategic issue, short-term wastewater plant sewer collection system master plan update, and an inflow and infiltration abatement study. This is going to be our project for the next year. I don't have any other capital projects. We need to get this master plan done. Most of you are aware that our master plans are severely outdated, 2004 through 2006. They're 13, 14, 15 years old. They all need to be done. This is the next one to be done. So we're going to go out that, and the I&I abatement study is to try to reduce our I&I in our sewer pipes. Our sewer plant was designed to treat 2.7 million gallons of sewage a day. And that was supposed to be good for the year 2030, I believe. Right now, we've had, I think, 148 days just this last year that it was over 3 million gallons a day, and some that were approaching 6 million gallons a day. That's all infiltration from groundwater, from our pipes, our system. And so we got to get a handle on that. So part of that money for that master plan, I'm going to put in for an I&I abatement study. We can go out and put flow meters at certain locations within our community in the manholes so we can see how much water is coming through there versus sewage. And then we can start focusing on our sanitary sewer basins to see how we can do the cast-in-place pipe that I talked about here, cured-in-place pipe. You just put a plastic pipe in there that heated up, seals all the holes in the pipe, and it's a real slick process. That's how you remove I&I from your systems. We've got to start doing it because right now we're just treating groundwater, a lot of it. And if you want to save money, that's what we got to do. There's going to be an investment in it. It's much cheaper than cutting the road, though. Digging up gravel and all that. You're just going down to an existing manhole, putting plastic pipe in, expanding it, and being done. So that's something we're looking at. That's going to be for this next year. It might stretch into part of next year, but I'm hoping to get it done this year. Long-term, ensure funding for annual maintenance capital outlay is sustainable to meet our 5-year capital improvement plans and requirements. Those will be adjusted based off that master plan, but right now I think they're pretty solid. And to reduce I&I in the sewer collection system. Challenges, I&I reduction. Funding for maintenance and inspection. Grow Class A biosolids marketing campaign and program. Reduce water usage at the wastewater treatment plant. That is huge. I wrote this down, and another way that we're going to look to save money is reducing our water usage at the plant. We used 71 million gallons of water last year down at the wastewater treatment plant. So I've started a policy down there that we're looking for ways anyway to reduce water usage, because each gallon that we're using down there is one less gallon that we have for our community. We've already reduced that by 40% with efficiencies. I think we can do better. And so that's something that we're looking at, trying to reduce our water, reuse water, things like that. Reinforced partnership with Stability. I think we broke the ice here last year. Mr. Mayor, myself, Mr. Campbell went and met with them. I think, and Andy has worked with them as well. I think that relationship is getting better, and it's going to have to be, because we both have work to do. Long term, I'd like to see sometime in the future the purchase of a TV truck to perform our own inspection at a reduced cost. When I say that, we pay each year, because we're required to by DEQ, to TV inspect up to 4 miles of sewer line and up to 2 miles of storm line, and then make repairs in those pipes. Well, that little contract costed $289,000 a year, and we're required to do that. I think we can get a truck for about $250,000 and do it ourselves. So if you start looking at the tax dollars there, I mean, let's just say $300,000 over 5 years, you're at $1.5 million. I think we may be able to move in the direction of doing it ourselves, and save money. And so we're going to be looking at the analysis on that and bring something forth here the next year or two. That's something in the long term that we're looking at, though. And continue to reduce I&I. And sometime in the next 5 years, we're going to have to replace that sludge dryer as well. We've talked about that before. It's kind of a relic. It's unfortunate, but it is. Changes. Pilot program for the Class A biosolids to give it away. Cost savings, city $75 grand. Potential. Master plan, sewer rate increase of the 1.9% that we talked about earlier. Again, transfers to the general fund and public works administration a little bit more because my guys are spending more time doing work down there. The retirement plan. These are all things from finance. Vehicle replacement fund, the stormwater funds being transferred. Yeah, and then payments to the stormwater fund to the sewer fund, $23,000 plus interest. That is for a water control district check. I believe that we paid them $230,000 a few years ago, and we're out of the sewer fund, and we're having to pay the sewer fund back. Is that correct, Andy?
Right, yeah, we're just moving some dollars around on that loan that was done for $230,000.
Capital outlay. As we talked about, wastewater master plan and the I&I abatement study, $175,000. I'll be looking at going out with that probably sometime in August to try to get that started. And with that, any questions that you have, I'll try to answer.
Councilor Ward?
So with the inflow and infiltration system, is that just for, are you concerned with that for the city lines, or is that something that is an issue with like homeowners lines? So
Both.
Same thing.
And I'm sure in that abatement study, they'll probably bring that up. We may actually look at take a sample size of, a sample population of laterals to see what kind of water we can see, and from that generate some sort of analysis of how much water is actually being brought in. But unless you TV every single line, you don't know. So
And that is like with older lines, when people have older.
Could be older, could be new, depending on how they were built, constructed. You just don't know.
And then an idea came to me.
You always like new ideas.
So could we look at maybe grants? So after we do this study and whatnot, could we look at possibly doing grants for homeowners for the I&I from their home to the street?
Once we find out what that amount is, yeah, I mean, we're always looking for grants for that. As far as the grants that Mr. Fleischman generates, that'll be something that we can look at. I won't say yay or nay here because I just don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Just want to put that idea out there.
That's a great idea. We love grants.
To incentivize people to help us.
Is there any other questions for Lance? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Lance, have we been able to divert all the stormwater that went into the Santiam ditch? Have we been able to divert all that into another collection system?
The detention pond that we just built?
Yeah, well.
No, we haven't. I haven't started yet. I will let, it wasn't constructed complete until probably October.
Okay.
The grasses hadn't established. Had I let stormwater go in there at that point, it would have been a muddy mess, probably would have been fined by DEQ quite heavily. So I kept it closed until the grass establishes. I think we'll be looking at August. I mean, this fall we'll be opening it up and using it. But
Okay.
until then, you're just asking for trouble.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councilor Hook?
Thank you, Chair Patty. I wanted to make sure that we managed some expectations ahead of time. As you were talking about possibly looking into purchasing a CCTV truck, should we be expecting that with the Public Works doing that work that we may need an increase in FTE to do that work in the future?
I don't know yet. I've talked to my supervisor about that, and we may be able to use an existing staff member down there. So I couldn't tell you until we do the analysis, and that's not something that's probably a couple of years out.
Okay, but there is a potential that that may be needed.
There is a potential for that,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah. And we'll look at all of that when we do that analysis.
And it'll still be a significant savings because,
When you start talking about 1.5 million over 5 years,
Yeah.
I would think so.
yeah.
Following on that question, Lance, is there any kind of sunset clause on these rules that we're under from DEQ as far as having to run CCTV?
Yeah, they're called, no, there is in fact, I think I have in my notes here, I don't think I discussed, it's more in stormwater, but they're actually looking at making our lives more difficult. with
Challenging.
New rules.
That's unfortunate. Thank you.
It is.
And then, did anyone else have any other, go ahead, Councilor Hook.
I just have one follow-up. If we were to purchase that truck and have someone come on board, could we also start lending out our services to neighboring communities for the same type of work? And
We already do that. We have a back truck that I've rented out to Turner and Amsville. They pay us what the going rate is for the back truck as well as our personnel. We don't put any profit on that, but they pay us, we've done it a couple times. I don't want to make it sound like we do it all the time. They've reached out, they're our neighbors, we helped them out, they paid for it.
awesome.
So yeah, there is an opportunity for that.
Cool.
And then as far as the plastic piping that you would insert in there, what's the lifetime of that solution? Is that?
25, 30 years, depending
Okay.
on the material.
Good. It's better than I expected, so great. Any other questions?
I
Mr.
was going
Cranston?
to ask a question on the plastic pipe also. A lot of the fixes that I've seen in cars, when you do that, when you go back to actually fix the problem, it makes that harder. If we put the pipe in and we have to then replace that pipe at a later date, is it going to make a difference there?
Well, there's new technologies all the time, I will say this. Could it make it harder in 20 years to replace that pipe? Yeah, it could. Or we've got a new treatment, it's called pipe bursting. And you just take like a drill bit and you go up that existing line and say you want to make it bigger. So I got a 12-inch pipe in the ground right now. And I need a 10 or a 20-inch line. I can go and do a thing called pipe bursting, that it pulls a pipe along in back of this bit and explodes the pipe as it gets laid. So there are new technologies coming in all the time. What I can tell you is digging up a street and putting rock in and taking people, it's cheaper, it's more efficient, and I think that's what we really ought to look at if we can, for maintenance purposes.
Thank you. Any other questions before we continue? Go ahead, Councilor Ort.
So we talked about there are streets in our community that the underground utilities need to be taken care of, and we don't have that in our street fund or our sewer fund. I know that we're having an increase in our sewer rates, but is any of that going into any of these capital improvements? We know that it's an issue, so are we, when and where and how do we talk about that?
Well, what I will say is that we don't have any plans this year to do any kind of capital projects, because I want to get the master plan done to reevaluate our system. Again, for those of you not aware, when this master plan was done, we had a growth rate projected of 3.8%. It showed all these projects needing to be done because we're going to have this mass, we're going to double our population. We're going to need so much more. Well, that just isn't going to be the case. We're instead of 3.8, we're looking at 0.8 or 0.9, 1%, or to 1%. We may not need some of the pipes that they show in our current master plan. We may not need it as big as they show it in our current master plan. So until we get the new master plan done, I really want to put off any kind of capital projects. But the last thing I want to do is put a 30-inch line in the ground if I only needed a 20-inch line, because it's just a waste of money. So I've kind of put capital projects on hold until that new master plan is done. But once that occurs, we'll be going right back to the capital, and we'll be doing lines in. There are lines in town that we can do. I know they're going to be 8-inch lines. It's just a neighborhood line. They're going to be 8-inch. But this year, I don't have anything forecast.
Can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So we don't know, we're not putting anything away, is I guess my concern. And I know that you want to wait, but if we know that we need something, then shouldn't we be putting, I don't know. I don't know how you decide, and forgive me. And
The fund is building.
okay.
It's not going away. I'll let Annie talk about that, but.
I guess I'm
our
confused
beginning
because I
fund
thought that we
balance-
didn't have any money
Our,
for this.
no, our stormwater, we have very little, but even stormwater, we're building our beginning fund balance because we're not doing a whole lot of work right now.
Okay.
Our expenses are this, I'll let Danny talk, he's the finance guy.
Mr. Parks, thank you.
Yeah, the answer to your question is you have about $200,000 a year available for capital right now in the sewer fund. We don't know, as Lance said, what the amount of annual need is. A big chunk of your money right now from rates is going to pay debt service. So, it's that debt service that needs to get retired that will ultimately free up capital to ultimately build a lot of these systems. You also have $3+ million of funds sitting in your sewer fund. How much of that can be used to pay for capital projects versus sitting in the bank? And I think, as Lance mentioned, it's very difficult to go out and say raise rates. You've got $3+ million in the bank, and you're not really quite sure how much your capital improvement plan is going to cost or what's needed. So, the very first step for doing much of anything is to find out what are the needs, and then from that build the financial plan around it. And we've been trying to do that again with these 5-year plans, which is to go back and really have them, they've somewhat thrown aside the master plans as they exist presently because they were built for this tremendous growth, as opposed to what are the maintenance requirements that are needed first. Because with growth of 0.5% or whatever, it's not new projects that are needed, it's maintaining the existing systems. And so they've gone back through and done a lot more analysis of that and laying that out. And now with these master plans that will look at growth as well as the maintenance requirements, I think you'll be able to get a better sense of where your requirements are. Note too that your sewer charge right now is above the averages of 60 whatever other communities in the state. So to be raising that rate for some, to set aside money for something that we don't know what it is, that is a little bit of a challenge. So I think, patience right now in getting this master plan, figured out and then looked at and ascertain again the needs and what their financial requirements are I think is the most prudent course.
I'm not saying that I want this on the video. I'm not saying that I want to raise rates. I'm just saying, I guess I misunderstood Lance when he said, and you too, when you said that we didn't have any money for these projects, because we do have these older roads and we do have these areas where we haven't touched the roads because everything underneath needs to be fixed up, but then I was told we didn't have money for that, so
You must have misunderstood me, or I miscommunicated that.
Yeah.
More particularly, their stormwater fund.
Okay.
The sewer fund, I won't say we're healthy, we're better off than the stormwater fund. We have money to do things in the sewer fund.
Gotcha.
But I'd like to get the capital, the master plan performed. I'd like to get the I&I abatement done, because that's maintenance. I&I is maintenance.
Yeah.
Which could be capital as well, depending on the master plan. I don't want to go out and waste money until we know what we need to do through the eyes of a 2019 or a 2020 master plan versus a 2004.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move along. Thank you.
Okay, stormwater fund. We have about the same FTEs there. We got 1/2 person. Accomplishments: we completed the Mill Creek Regional Detention Facility construction project this last October. Our activity measures: these are percent regulatory submittals. This is DEQ, our TMDL report annually. Lineal foot of storm drains cleaned, 6,000. Number of swales detention maintained 4, ditches cleaned 200 linear feet, manholes cleaned 35, catch basins 50, number of active accounts 2750. So customers per FTE, we've got 5,500 actual customers per man-hour or FTE, full-time employee. Short-term, this is what I was talking about earlier. I'd like to incorporate Green Street technologies to help us be more efficient with our stormwater, as well as spreading our stormwater dollars out. I might be able to use some street funds for that. We haven't decided yet, but when you're building curbs and sidewalks, the area between the curb and the sidewalk, would be a great place for a swale. It's Green Street technology. Look for additional funding sources for our projects. Community education for stormwater quality and detention issues. That's ongoing. We meet with the schools annually. I generally try to have volunteers come and paint. I'm not sure if you've seen it, the storm drainage insignia by each one of our catch basins in the community, just to give a heads up that anything you pour in a catch basin going right to the river or the Salem ditch. I've got volunteers usually from ISERV do that, but recently they've just been students and volunteers. Long-term, ensure funding for annual maintenance and capital outlay is sustainable to meet the 5-year capital improvement project. And in the long term, I'm hoping in the next year or two, we get the stormwater master plan done, because that is very critical. We just don't have the funds to do it right now. And that's why we want the sewer fund master plan. Short term, educate contractors, homeowners about city stormwater design standards. That's a touchy subject, not touchy really. It's really about letting people know the design standards that the city adopted in 2010 and how they apply to their work, whether it's a building a new house or a commercial development, or just educating those folks on what the city standards are. Continue best management practices for infrastructure and construction projects. Look for outside funding sources for stormwater infrastructure projects. Long term, we've got perhaps some DEQ standards coming our way in the next year, I've been informed, and the testing requirements for stormwater, for lead and TSS and things like that. It's going to cost a little bit more money. That's not written in stone yet, but that's the word going around the organizations that I belong to. And ongoing funding sources to meet stormwater infrastructure needs. Changes. Stormwater maintenance operations and expense from $45,000 to $82,000. That is due to, we've got some the industrial ponds that we're going to be cleaning. They've been needed to be cleaned, and that's part of the MOU, the Memo of Understanding with the Water Control District. But it's just good maintenance practice to clean those things once in a while, and it's been several years before we've done that. And we're going to be doing some work for the Sylvan Springs Pond out there. That thing needs to be excavated and cleaned out and reseeded. We're going to be working as a partner with the Sylvan Springs Homeowners Association to get that done. Hopefully it'll reduce flooding out in the Sylvan Springs neighborhood. That's the goal. Transfers similar to the last funds. And no supplemental investment in the city retirement. Capital improvements. Pollution control manholes, again, this is partly due to the Memo of Understanding, partly just because we're good stewards of our water. We want to make sure the water, the stormwater we dump into North Santiam, the Salem ditch, which goes to Mill Creek, any of the water bodies around us, we want to make sure that's clean of heavy metals, oils, greases, gases. So anywhere we have pipe going into those, we've been, since I've been here, I've been trying to periodically put these pollution control manholes in before they enter the stream, try to clean that water up and keep it clean. And then we've got $10,000 for storm system improvements. This money is generally used in conjunction with the street project. We might have some catch basins that are 3 feet from the curb that we move back to the curb, that kind of thing. It's not very much, but it works for what we do when we do street improvement projects. And that concludes stormwater. I'll answer any questions that you may have regarding that fund.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Ludwig? Go ahead, Mr. Minguez. Yep.
Can you explain what the swells, what those are and how they work?
Swales.
Yes.
They can actually, depending on how you build them, they can be used as stormwater detention, and they clean the water. So the surface is usually built with either grasses or plugs, plant plugs. Water comes in, greases stick to them. It's a biological cleaning process, much like a water treatment plant, but they use grasses, and it removes up to 85% of phosphorus, nitrogen. And then if you want to combine it with the, to form a detention facility, which is what I'm kind of looking at, below the surface you have about 18 inches of granular material, which the water goes down in the voids and it sits there, and what doesn't percolate, it just sits there, it'll build up, and there'll be an overflow. Most of the time when you design those, you design them so it'll hold a 100-year event. So it's just going to sit there. You may have water come out if you have back-to-back 25-year events. That is just the way it is. It saves money because you don't have to put a 12-inch pipe up and down your street and catch basins. You put curb cuts in, water goes down the curb, goes to the opening, into the swale, it sits there. That's what a swale is. One type of swale.
Mr. Campbell?
What about 10th Street or example one?
No.
Yes, it
Not
is.
10th Street, no.
High
Sure it is.
Are-
Those are detention ponds, those aren't swales.
Where would be
No.
a swale?
I haven't really seen any swales that I'm thinking about here in town, actually.
She's got a follow-up for you.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned that you put it between the curb and the sidewalk.
Yes.
So I wasn't sure, is that just a raised space between?
No, it's
or-
actually a slight swale.
Oh, okay.
So you got your curb, your sidewalk, and in between it's going to be a little depression in there. Water goes into that depression and it stays there. And then it percolates into the ground for the detention. Because you, regardless if you have high groundwater or not, you could put a liner if you have high groundwater to keep water from flowing up. And it goes into the granular material and it sits there until it evaporates.
Mr. Perry?
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Can I see swales in front of the middle school? Are those detention
That's a
basins?
detention pond.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was going to, okay.
Mr. Cranston, go ahead.
Thank you. Would the things inside the parking lot be considered swales, inside the
Some of them are. I'd have to see what parking lot you're talking about.
the one at the middle school? Because it's got the big detention
I'd have to
pond
go
out
look at
front.
it. I really couldn't tell you, because I don't think I've actually driven down there and looked at it. It's private, I don't maintain those things, so. It might be, though. It could be, I don't know.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move along.
All right, moving work to Public Works Administration, a fund near and dear to my heart. We have the same amount of employees. Last year, we hired an engineering tech. He's been working out real good. Been taking some work off of my plate and the senior engineering technician's plate. He's allowed us to go out and do the sidewalk project. I have him designing scenic view right now. He did this, the Washington Street bike lane striping plan. I mean, he's done quite a bit. He's been a huge asset, and he's a local kid, so that's even better. Accomplishment, we're doing the Regent Street improvement project now. Shaft Road sanitary and sewer water line design and sanitary sewer, it's done, ready to go when we're ready to do it. Sidewalk replacement plan project, we're ongoing right now. Water treatment plant and resanding project, it's ongoing right now. Scenic View Drive improvements plan design, it's ongoing, it's almost done. Washington Street bike lane striping and signage plan, that is complete, ready to go for the county. And annual parks mowing contract documents, and quite frankly, we prepare all the contract documents and plans that go out for any of the projects that we perform here in the city. So that could just say, contract documents and contract administration through my department. Activity measures, average inspections per week, 10. Structural permits, 21. Family dwellings, 13. Right-of-way permits issued annually, 41. You can see, I don't need to go that. My guys are they're busy going out and performing inspections. rental hours for the community center, as well as the Jordan Bridge, and they're about 1,200 hours. Short-term strategic issues: continue to look for ways to make the development and building process more user-friendly. Last year, we prepared a nice flow chart that shows what a development or a developer or an applicant that wants to do any kind of permitting in our city for site development, what that process is. It's a nice flow chart, and Lisa Meyer prepared it for us. It's good. It's very explanatory. It's very transparent about timelines. I'm not sure how many developers actually look at it, but it's there. We try to, point it to it, but you know what, you can lead a horse to water, but you know the story. Maximize internal resources by professional development classes and cross-training. We've recently started some cross-training with the police department, and I think that's going to work out real well. So we have people that can take vacations and people can cover for us, that type of thing. Long-term, look for grants, other methods to help fund infrastructure projects. That's something that's ongoing for us. Earn the trust and protect the treasure of the city taxpayers. That's near and dear to my heart. I know you guys probably hear me say it, but it's really, each day I come in, I look for ways to save money for the city, our taxpayers, and I try to instill that in the people that work for me. So I just want you to know that. Short term, perform project management in all our city projects. Put city maps, as-built together online. I had that there last year, just haven't been able to do it. We're updating the public works standards and specs now. Invest in the Street Saver software that I spoke about earlier. Employee development and training. I'm someone that really values education and training. I like a highly skilled workforce. I think it just saves the city money. Keeps them, it protects the city as well from any kind of liability issues. If they know new standards, new methods, new expectations, new best management practices, it just helps the city. So I'm all for that, and I really like our players, our employees to go that and use those. Increase our partnerships and strive to improve the effectiveness of our services. Changes. There are no supplemental investments. These are financial. We are going to be updating our aerial map this year of the city. We've had quite the development going on in the last couple of years, and it's always nice to get an updated map. Each one of the funds are kicking in a certain amount of money to get that done, so we're going to fly the city, get an aerial. We'll be using it for our GIS. We're also looking at getting a investment or asset management software to help us manage all our assets in the city, sewer, storm, whether that's facilities, sewer, storm, water, streets. It's a software that's going to help us manage those to the best of our ability to be more efficient with our tax dollars. And we have no capital items budgeted this fiscal year. And that concludes Public Works Administration. Do you have any questions?
Anyone have questions? I have one. What does the cross-training with the police agency for professional development encompass for you? And
that is more along the line that there's two things there: professional development and cross-training.
Yeah.
You could probably look at it as professional development, but we have my Public Works Administrative Assistant is going over, and she is being trained for Ritz. Please help me out. What's Michelle exactly do?
In the records
department.
Records, got it.
So she also works at the courthouse. Michelle does. So there's dual roles there. So when she's on vacation, that she can go over there and help. Is it Michelle or is it?
It's for Rachel.
Rachel, excuse me.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone else?
It's cross-training.
I have a question.
All right, Councilor Ward.
This is for, forgive me for a previous, but I just thought of it now. So you had mentioned kind of bridging a relationship with Sublimity. Can you give us a little bit more detail on that, or no? Or?
I think it's a good summary of where we're at.
Okay. Just maybe for the new people in the room. Okay.
All right, moving right along. Anyone? Oh. Okay, facilities fund, please continue.
That concludes my
Okay,
tonight.
great.
So thank you very much for listening, and I'm always down at the Public Works Department.
Thank you for all you do,
Lance.
Lance.
What? Oh, I am sorry.
He's not done.
I apologize. Go ahead. Facilities.
Yeah, so the facilities fund accounts for City Hall, Police Station, and a few other items that you rent out to generate revenue. One item that we mentioned earlier in the Parks Fund was moving $100,000 from Parks back to the Facilities Fund. The money was originally in Facilities, transferred out to the Parks Fund to do the Jordan Bridge replacement. As Lance mentioned, he hadn't got anyone to work on that. The thinking was, rather than have it be there and it's not something that gets accomplished, that doesn't necessarily reflect well on Lance, so put it back into this fund until there is, through the needs assessment, a better understanding of what the scope and nature of that project is. And then at that point, if that cost is $200,000, you may determine that maybe that's not what you want to do. You may want to relocate it, as the mayor, mentioned as a possibility. So the money's back here to ultimately wait until you have, through the needs assessment, a better idea of exactly what the plan might be. The transfers from the users, or effectively rent, is rent from, say, the police and the admin. It's based on a square footage basis, and what we're trying to do is get the rent up to a market rate, but also a rate that would ultimately be sufficient to pay debt service on a facility, a replacement facility. And we're looking at what the cost of those facilities are, less the down payment that you might have through this process, and ultimately the ability to build a police station and a city hall without having to go to the voters and ask for the funds, that it's just built in as an operational type cost. This is something we've done in other communities, and it's an in-progress type of thing. So the forecast right now would be in 4 years you would have that type of rent being generated from your users to do that. You also get some money from your water and sewer, street, and library facilities to pay for some staffing costs associated with helping with some of the the repairs and maintenance that they do. And that's that personnel cost of $13,700. You do have a facilities needs assessment that Keith mentioned earlier, and this is again a comprehensive look at City Hall, Police Station, Community Center, the pool facility, the Jordan Bridge, and there may be some others that ultimately arise through that process. And then you have a $750,000 plus, in contingency again, that's, being built up to, be used, for the construction of, acquisition of land if you need to, or construction of property. Glad to address any questions you may have.
So anyone have questions? Okay, go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Chair Patty. Andy, actually, I think this is more for Keith. Keith, I feel like accountability is huge, and I am vehemently opposed to having that $100,000 moved from the parks over to facilities, because the bridge work, getting an RFP for that was tasked kind of last year. There were questions about it, and I get that it wasn't understood where that was supposed to be looked at to go and find that information of who's going to do the covered bridge work, but I think it reflects more on the community of what they would want to keep that over in parks, because that is something that people use a lot down in Pioneer Park. It's kind of a staple of a lot of like weddings and photos. I mean, you go and you search on the internet for Stayton and our bridge pops up. So I just think it's important that that work gets done and that the RFP gets put out to the right people, and that it's done this year. I don't want to push it off anymore.
Can I speak to that just a little bit, if I may?
I will too.
Unfortunately, when we're dealing with state contracts, we have to follow a process when it's over a certain amount of money. A $100,000 bid, I've got to send that out for an open bid. I can't just go grab a contractor here and do it. I've got to show an initiative that I went out to the DJC, openly put it out for bid. I did it not once, but twice. At this point, I think we may be able to, I'd have to talk to our city attorney, we may be able to go out and grab somebody or go to an individual source to do it. I'm not sure of that, but when you start talking about monies in excess of $35,000, I have a process that I need to follow. I just can't go down here on Shaft Road and, hey, or Oregon State Builders, our bridge builders right here across the bridge. I went over there and talked to them to ask them who we could use. But I can't just go and give them a contract. I got to put it out on the open, and I can't force people to bid on it. So we may be at that point where if I talk to the city attorney and show that we put it out to bid twice and we didn't get any people to bid on it or come in with a proposal, we may be able to go out and find somebody and give that to them. But to start with, I couldn't do it. And I want that to be clear. I got to follow state contracting law.
I understand that. Thank you.
Ms. Dominguez, go ahead.
Sure.
Hi, I just have a quick follow-up to that. Is it possible to put out for an RFP again, once you've identified contractors that are potentially interested in the repairs, and then once you put it out for RFP, go ahead and notify them that it is out there in case they do show an interest?
We did that last time. In fact, we have a report that was generated by a bridge consultant and / contractor. He prepared the report of what's wrong with it. We contacted them. Never bid on the job. We told him we're coming out with an RFP twice. He didn't come bid on it. He's the guy that we hired to do the inspection to tell us what's wrong with the bridge. It's an entire engineering firm that has contractors working for them. They just didn't do it. So I'm not opposed to doing anything. Let me, really, we can go out to an RFP. I want to get it done as well. I don't know what it'd take to go out with an RFP if the money's in the facilities fund. I don't know the ramifications for that because I'm not a finance guy, but I'm not opposed to going out for an RFP again and talking to our city attorney to see if we can just go find someone to give them the contract. But I'm sure, I'm not an attorney, but I'm sure that's been so much time has passed, they're going to say, well, you got to put it up for an RFP again, just to show this year no one's bidding on it. And at that point, we may be able to do that, but I'd have to get that kind of information from our city attorney.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
Lance, do you think it's a matter of money? What if we said we don't care what it costs, we want it fixed or upgraded? I mean, that's a little over the top.
Money talks, but I just don't have the answer to that. I wish I could.
So we don't know whether 100,000 was enough or almost enough or not near enough. We don't.
Most of the time when we have a contract and we don't have enough bid, they'll tell us. They'll come and say, hey, we looked at this, you're not even close.
Okay.
Because we'll give an engineer's estimate on the work, and they'll say your engineer's estimate's not even close to what we come to, and they'll tell us, they may not bid on it, but they'll tell us right up front.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I can't answer that, Mr. Mayor. I wish I could.
On this one, he just got nothing back.
Nothing. Twice. And we put it out for, I think, 4 weeks the first time, and then 6 weeks the second time, tried to generate. And we put it out late fall and early winter, thinking people they're got to be looking for work, It's wintertime. Most contractors their work dries up a little bit in the wintertime. So we didn't get any kind of responses. And then the other thing is that we reach a certain point, and then we start talking about when do we close it off? When do we continue to go out? Because we have people that rent it from March through September. Are we going to not take any reservations for that March to September while we look for someone? Because if we get a contract and he comes in March to September, then we got to call him up, sorry, we're doing work on the bridge. You're going to have to cancel your wedding. So we have timelines that we're trying to stay within a range so we can still meet our citizens that rent it, as well as try to get the work done. And that's what we were up against this last year.
Okay.
Councilor Quigley.
Lance, my recollection, there was an assessment of the actual problems with the bridge, correct? Done?
Yes.
And my recollection is that it was structural in nature for the most part, the support beams and whatnot. I really think that's the issue, and that's why you're not getting too many response to the RFP.
That person that did that structural, I actually reached out to him to see if he didn't bid on it, he didn't refer it. Well, I can't say he didn't refer it, but.
Well, you figured he would refer it. I mean, he has a lot of colleagues in that same industry.
That's what I was thinking when I called him and talked to him, and we didn't get anything.
I remember reading it.
Ms. Dominguez?
I'm sorry, just one more quick question. If we didn't pursue an RFP in this budget period, what is the estimated time that it needs to be repaired in to keep structural soundness to the bridge?
The bridge isn't used for vehicles. I don't think it's going to fall, I mean, it's not going to fall apart. It needs work. Most of the work is underneath and inside, structural blocking, that type of thing. Again, I'm more than open to do it. I'm not saying no here. I'm just trying to say we move the money back until we figure out how we're going to approach it.
And there's no liability that it's creating if it's not repaired?
I would drive my truck on it. I wouldn't have any problems at all doing it, to be quite honest.
Mr. Campbell?
I guess I want to say, Councilor Hook asked the question, to me, and Lance had talked about it. As we were preparing for the budget, I think this was one of the items we spent the most time talking about, just because of what you said, which is we realize it is kind of an iconic, and talking about what would be the right approach. So, I'm happy to have this conversation, and we're having this conversation now. I just wanted to say that this had been something that we had spent a significant amount of time in talking about and addressing, and what is the right approach, and what could we do to move forward. So, he's talking about going out to bid. We have our policies in place. There are additional things we have to do, but I think at some points you can look to do a direct bid if you've gone through a process and can show that you've done that. The challenge would be trying to find somebody who would take it, and I think we could even, talking to Andy right now, we could spend this out of the facilities fund too. We could put this as still a priority that we want to try to do. We recognize the bridge as important. We spent a lot of time and energy a few years ago getting the bridge back to being safe. So we know some of the additional challenges that's going to take, but this has been an ongoing issue for a couple of years now, trying to get bids on it.
So quick follow-up, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, essentially what I'm hearing you saying is by transferring this money into the facilities fund, it's not closing the book on searching for some alternatives or some sort of process to restore the bridge.
I would say no, this isn't closing the process at this point.
Okay.
If I could, I think with respect to Councilor Hook's concern would be that this not get delayed needlessly. Let's say that gets thrown into the needs assessment, which may take quite a bit of time to go through that entire process. You can expedite, with the money that's there on the facility needs assessment to move forward, immediately to get better information as it relates specifically to this bridge, to develop a plan to ultimately, whatever that plan may be, and just get it moving forward while the public process for the rest of that stuff, works its way through. I think that the challenge is having $100,000 and having gone through this for 2 budget cycles and, not having it, it done. I think that's the struggle we had is, do you put it in again and then we come back and, we're having the same conversation in May of 2020. And that's, I think, we were, of the opinion, how do you move this thing forward to where you can get something done different as opposed to you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's where we wanted to avoid that.
Okay, Councilor Ort, we've got a question.
You kind of answered it, but also we mentioned some other avenues of places that you could look, the Lacombe Bridge, is that what you're saying? And then maybe some people who worked on the ones out in Scioto, so just...
Yeah.
So I guess that was my question, so clarifying that putting the money back into the facilities fund is not going to push it down as a goal to get this.
No, in fact,
back on the books.
what I heard the other night, Councilman Quigley mentioned a bridge in Lynn County, and I've heard Marion County as well. I will reach out to my people my contacts there and see who did that, see what they had to do to get bids, that kind of thing. I didn't realize that until the other night, though. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move right along. Thank you.
Pension Stabilization Fund, this is a new fund, and this is being created to help smooth out the increasing cost that you're going to experience with PERS. PERS has been going up, as you know, the last few bienniums. It was, I think, 2013, in that neighborhood, when the legislature passed some legislation that lowered rates. Everybody thought it was solved, but they didn't take into account that they would lose at the Supreme Court and ultimately have everything that they did get reversed and actually drive up costs. Those costs are going to be felt for the next 8 to 10 years. What we've laid out is a plan to pay down the UAL, at least a portion of that initially, which is around $250,000, about 12.5%. And then there will be a rate credit that comes from that. Silly as that sounds, you're $2 million in the hole and you give them a little bit of money and then they tell you you can owe us less. But that's the way the system ultimately is designed to work. So the plan is to take the savings, it's about $18,000 a year, together with some additional money, a surcharge, if you will, within the police budget, to move back into this fund and to charge them over the next couple of years, actually it's around 4 years, to where when you get out around year 5, it will be a stable level of funding that the police have already, captured, and you'll start using some of this money to be paying the cost of that PERS. In the meantime, we'll continue to work with with staff to see if there aren't some different ways to ultimately lower that cost. And that's finding additional sources of funding. The state's looking at different things still, including a match on this that could be up to 25%. However, the state hasn't funded that that particular pool yet, and won't until at least 2021. But the city's being proactive, I think, in this area, and I'm working with other clients that are being much more, I won't say much more proactive, but I guess they're being more, taking on additional risk. They're borrowing 100% of the UAL amount and paying that off with debt. And as a finance person, I would tell you that's a cheaper way to go than not. But it takes time to go through that whole educational process and get people comfortable with the concept of issuing debt. But this gets you, I think, moving in the right direction in terms of paying down the obligation, stabilizing the ultimate cost, to the city, and stabilizing, the amount of police presence that you can have in town. So, be glad to address, any of the mechanics and numbers for you on it.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Parks regarding this matter?
Well, an observation. This morning at breakfast, local business owner offered a observation that one of the ways to take care of this was to wait till all of us in Tier 1 were dead, and that would start to solve some of the problem.
Off the books.
Off
Off the books was the term.
Oh, okay. Translate off.
That was the more politically correct term.
Translate off the books.
Well, did they come up with a plan to help with that?
Okay.
Just let that one go.
All right. Any other questions, Mr. Parks? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on.
Off the books.
Okay, the vehicle replacement fund, we had hoped to kind of wrap this up last year. There's, one little thing that your finance consultant failed to consider, and that's you've got this outstanding loan. So the vehicle replacement fund had loaned money to the Stormwater fund, was getting repaid. So there's $154,000 that is still owed to the vehicle replacement fund. So We've taken the money from the sewer fund that has $3+ million. It's going into the vehicle replacement fund, so it's paid off. And now the loan for the stormwater fund, instead of being paid back to the vehicle replacement, would be paid back to the stormwater. That would allow us to go ahead and take the money in the vehicle replacement fund, use some money for Pynchon stabilization, and then take the rest of the money and put it back out to the sewer, the storm, the street, and the water funds. And then close that fund, and it's no longer. Any questions on that
Any
one?
questions on the vehicle replacement fund?
Off the books, yeah.
Please continue.
That's cold. It's just cold.
All right, back to me. SDC funds. We've kind of put all the SDC funds on one slide, 2 slides here to discuss those. First slide is SDC rates. I want to see what we have there. Excellent. Finance Department recommends a 3% increase at this time. We will verify that construction cost index in June of 2019, and we will adjust that 3% as necessary. That's for forecasting. Parks SDC fund, we collected approximately $62,000 in SDC fees in 18-19. We project approximately $83,500 to be collected in 19-20 through building and development. And there's no transfer budgeted for 19-20. Street SDC fund collected approximately $130,000 from new development, in 18-19. We project approximately $70,300 SDCs in 19-20. A transfer of $7,800 will go into the street fund to complete the transportation plan. And we'll have developer reimbursements of up to $25,000 for the shaft road improvements. That is a arterial road. It's in our master plan, and so we will be contributing to the cost of constructing that. Those reimbursements, 25,000, I'll just leave it at that. Water SDC fund. We collected approximately $100,000 in SDC fees in 18-19. We project approximately $86,900 in SDC fees to be collected in 19-20. Developer reimbursements of $55,000 for a 10-inch water line that will be constructed as part of the Lambert Place subdivision. There we have shown our master plan a 10-inch line going north. They are going to construct that. We will be reimbursing them through credits when they come in for building permits, up to whatever that impact is. Sewer SDC fund. We collected approximately $95,000 in 18-19. We project approximately $64,700 SDCs to be collected in 19-20. Developer reimbursements of up to $195,000 for a 12-inch sanitary sewer line improvement, which will also be in the Lambert Place subdivision. It goes through the subdivision and ties into the Mill Creek sewer line. Those actually will be primarily through SDC credits as they come in and get their building permits. Wastewater master plan update, transfer of $175,000 for the sewer SDC fund to fund the sewer fund for the wastewater master plan update and the I abatement study. Stormwater SDC fund collected $56,000 in 18-19 in fees. Project $77,200 in fees to be collected in 19-20. And we have no transfers budgeted for 19-20. The developer reimbursements shown in each fund are estimates only. We've got to come up with project projections. Development agreement has not been completed and executed at this time, so the final numbers may differ from what is shown. Most of the actual reimbursements for the funds will be reimbursed as credits to the developer when they obtain a building permit. So I don't have the spreadsheet here, but each time the developer or builder comes in for a building permit, they pay SDC funds. So if we owe them reimbursements, they just don't pay us that amount, and that's that until they meet that full impact. So we won't be cutting any checks to anybody for that amount. They just won't be paying us their SDC fees when they come in for building permits.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Lance, references there to, all through this SDC thing, Lambert Development, Hayden Homes?
Yeah,
So, same.
yeah.
Okay, all right. And that's because the development agreement hasn't been completed?
We're working on it now, we're
Right,
finalizing
right.
it, yeah.
Okay, but that's, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Please continue.
That is it for the Public Works portion of this budget hearing tonight. If you have any other questions regarding SDCs or anything else, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Councilor Hook, go ahead with your question.
I am curious if, how much longer we have for this budget, and if it would be smart to adjourn at about 8 o'clock.
We have one more slide after this.
Yeah.
Sweet.
We're going to go ahead and continue.
I guess it's depending on all of you, but we are at essentially the end.
Cool.
Just more in the form of how this is organized. Is there a way we can put all the SDCs at the same spot next year so we're not flipping through 60 pages to find SDC pages to read and look at?
I will be happy to have a conversation with Mr. Ludwig to make sure next year he puts them all individual instead of lumps them like this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other questions? Ms. Dominguez, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, and I'm not sure who would answer this. I see on all of the SDC funds, regardless of which one it is, there's the contingency area. What would that be used for, and why do we put that line in there?
It's a good question. The answer to the last part of your question, why do we put it in there, is by Oregon budget law, we have to have a balanced budget. And we have to ultimately put it somewhere. And contingency is the most flexible place to put it. So it's to allow for unexpected events. For example, developer reimbursements need to be increased during the course of the year, or the sewer master plan is not going to cost $175,000, it's going to cost $200,000, it's being funded with SDCs, we can move the money around with the resolution at the council level. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead and move to our, unless you have anything else for us, Mr. Campbell? Mr. Campbell.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Can you repeat
No
the question,
worries.
please?
Do you have anything else from your management team regarding the
I
budget?
think so. At this point, I think we've completed the presentation. At this point, we have questions and comments. Do you want to go ahead and Andy, I'll let you.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, if you don't have any further questions related to it, you're ready really for the action part of the meeting, and there's four things that are, asked of you here that can be just put in the form of a motion with a second and a majority vote.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Parks. Moving on to the conclusion and the voting, as the mayor likes to say, what do you folks want to do with this? Councilor Hook, please.
That's a fair question.
I would like to move that we approve the budget with the modification of leaving the $100,000 in the parks for the Jordan Bridge, so it has a label on it and doesn't get forgotten, and then including keeping the stipend conversation in there, but holding maybe a task force with community members that can talk about how that stipend would look and how it would be paid out and what the rules would be.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to offer a motion to consider approval of budget in the amount of $24,149,549 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion seconded. Go ahead and vote on that first. Okay. Melissa, would you poll the council? Committee, excuse me.
Yes, of course. Councilor Ort?
We don't want to talk about it anymore.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize.
Discussion.
Go ahead and have discussion here.
You got some?
Counselor Ort?
Chair Patty, thank you.
Counselor Hook?
If this is what the motion is going to be and there won't be any amendment to it, my vote will be no tonight for the reasons that I put before.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Mayor?